9 spine-chilling and sinister true horror stories from Oregon's most haunted small towns revealed. Clara Moore could feel the prickling of the hairs on her neck the moment they rolled into Silver Creek. The quaint houses, draped in autumn's fiery palette, contrasted with the unsettling vibe that clung to the fog-prone air. As she sat in the passenger seat, her gaze swept over the looming pines, tall and silent like guardians of an unspoken terror. Something wasn't right in this idyllic town. Settling into their old Victorian home felt like stepping into a dream soon tinged with dread. The children, Lily and Max, giggled as they raced around the backyard, oblivious to the shadows that seemed to stretch and contract in the twilight. Clara wanted so desperately to embrace this peaceful life, but there was something about the silence of the woods, the way whispers danced through the trees, that gnawed at her confidence. The evenings were thick with an unsettling energy, and Clara shivered as she stood at the window, watching as 2 figures whispered at the edge of the forest, their faces obscured by shadow. At the diner where she worked, the townsfolk greeted her with cautious smiles. Regulars sat engrossed in their conversations, but the atmosphere dripped with tension. As she wiped a table clean, hushed voices clawed at her ears tales of the abandoned asylum that clung to the town's outskirts. The stories were interwoven with despair, of families torn apart and children who vanished without a trace. Clara couldn't help but feel the chill creeping down her spine. The laughter outside felt different now, echoes of something lost, almost sinister. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The night of the Harvest Festival edged closer, but excitement transformed into an undercurrent of dread. As Clara prepared, she noticed how traditions twisted around like vines, invoking fear where joy should flourish. She caught a glimpse of the festival poster plastered on her diner's wall, a colorful display that masked the unsettling reality, a blur of smiling faces and shadowed corners. The festival loomed large, yet Clara found herself drawn to the whispers that haunted the edges of the town. Panic surged within her when she learned that a beloved neighbor had vanished without even a sound, an empty house now a ghost in a town of memories. Whispers turned frantic, eyes darting nervously. Clara's heart raced. What were they hiding? Driven by an instinct to protect her children, she sought answers in the depths of the woods, where terror lingered just beneath the surface. Shadows shifted, and she caught glimpses, figures watching, waiting, their eyes glinting with something that ripped through the veil of her new life. The weight of discovery threatened to crush her. The rituals rumored among the townsfolk took root in her mind, twisting her perception of safety into something monstrous. There was a predator cloaked in trust, and every friendly face she met morphed into a potential threat. Just as Clara thought she could shield her family from the danger lurking around every corner, a chilling message crossed her path, taunting her resolve. The cost of leaving could be far worse than staying. The sanctuary of her dreams turned to a nightmare. Gripping her children's hands, Clara stepped into the gathering darkness of Silver Creek. The unsettling truth that something unnameable lurked in plain sight chased them deeper into the woods. Would she uncover the sheer horror binding the community together, or would it consume them all? Clara moved forward into the encroaching darkness, her heart pounding like thunder against her ribcage. The moon was a mere sliver in the inky sky, casting twisted shadows that danced like specters among the trees. Each step felt weighted, as if the ground itself throbbed with something alive and malevolent. Max clutched her right hand while Lily held onto her left, their small fingers trembling, a mirror of their mother's anxiety. "Mom, can we go back?" Max quivered, his voice barely a whisper. "No, not yet. We need to find out what's happening," Clara reassured him, though her own conviction was crumbling. A cold wind rustled through the branches, carrying a distant sound like laughter wrapped in anguish. Her nerves tightened, electric with an awareness that their every footfall was being monitored. Suddenly, from the corner of her eye, Clara spotted movement. A silhouette glided between the trees. Her breath hitched as she froze, shadows deepening around them. "Did you see that?" she whispered urgently, eyes darting to the spot. Max and Lily nodded, wide-eyed, and Clara could feel the panic creeping back in. They needed to hurry. She urged them forward, trying not to glance back. Every instinct screamed at her to flee, yet the compulsion to uncover the town's secret was suffocatingly powerful. Drawing in a sharp breath, she picked up the pace, her feet slapping against the damp earth. As they pushed deeper into the woods, the trees grew denser and the air thickened with an oppressive weight. It felt as if the very atmosphere turned judgmental. Just ahead, Clara could see the outline of a decrepit building. Its silhouette, jagged against the moonlight, loomed like a warning. "The asylum," she muttered, half to herself. The stories came rushing back. Mad laughter, cries for help, a place buried in the marrow of despair. "Stay close," Clara instructed, her voice trembling as she tightened her grip on her children. The dawning realization settled heavily atop her heart. This place harbored secret solitary screams, perhaps even the missing neighbors. They approached, heartbeats intertwined in a frantic rhythm. Clara swallowed hard as they reached the stone steps, decayed and cracked. The door hung ajar, an invitation and a threat. She exchanged a nervous glance with her children. Lily's eyes shimmered with tears, while Max trembled. Leaving the safety of the woods felt impossible yet necessary. Just a peek, she decided, pushing the door open wider. It creaked like the groans of a long-forgotten spirit. Inside, an oily darkness swallowed them whole. Lily squeezed her mother's hand, her little face pale. "I don't like it here, Mommy," she whimpered. Clara could barely process her own fear as she led them inside. The air was thick and musty, imbued with the scent of decay. Scraps of paper fluttered around like lost souls, and shadows seemed to curl around the corners, whispering tales of anguish and chaos. She felt the weight of eyes upon them from every crevice, every shadow. Suddenly, from the darkness, a shape shifted. A figure emerged, legs coated in grime, moving unnaturally. Clara's heart dropped. This was no friendly townsfolk, it was something unrecognizable. It shuffled closer, its face obscured, but the essence of malice was unmistakable. "Get back!" Clara shouted, her voice barely piercing the thick silence. But it was already too late. The figure lunged, a swift blur of motion, eyes gleaming like dark holes beneath a night sky. Clara's breath hitched as she yanked her children backward and stumbled, crashing against the doorway. Behind them, the shadows pulsed, growing ever closer. In that moment, clarity hit her. They had walked into the bowels of darkness that Silver Creek had concealed. Terrified cries echoed down the hallways, entwining with the laughter that once echoed in her children's joyous voices. Her instinct to escape flared. The horror of being trapped gripped her stomach. Just as she turned to flee, a hand shot out from the murk, grasping her ankle with icy fingers, dragging her back into the shadows. Clara screamed. The familiar smile of this quaint town had been a mask clinging to malevolence, and she led her children straight into its mouth. As screams filled the air, an unearthly laugh rose above it all, resounding, mocking, an ultimate betrayal. The taut grip of panic began to unravel, revealing the truth she had feared the most. There was no escape from Silver Creek. What awaited them in the suffocating darkness? And how many had already fallen victim to its sinister grasp? The horror was just beginning. Clara felt her world start to collapse around her. The grip on her ankle tightened as if the darkness itself was claiming her. "Mommy!" Max screamed, his voice piercing through the chilling laughter that enveloped them. With a surge of adrenaline, Clara jerked her leg free and stumbled backward, pulling her children with her. The figure, obscured by shadows, seemed to waver, flickering like a faulty light. It lurched forward, and Clara caught a fleeting glimpse of a tormented face, contorted and twisted, a scream frozen in place, echoing the endless anguish that permeated the asylum. "Run!" she gasped, urgency propelling her forward. They dashed deeper into the building, heartbeats pounding in their ears. The hallway stretched out like a cavern, walls lined with peeling wallpaper that seemed to breathe. Each step they took scraped against the floor littered with debris, a graveyard of forgotten memories. Lily's sobs clawed at Clara's resolve. "Mommy, I want to go home." Her voice broke, exposing the raw fear bubbling beneath the surface. Clara turned to her, knelt, and cupped her daughter's face. "Hold on tight, sweetheart. We need to keep moving. We'll find a way out." But as they pressed on, the whispers wrapped around them, echoes of those once tormented within these walls. Clara could almost hear their pleas, a tapestry woven of despair. Help us, it was unbearable, like 1,000 ghosts mingling, clawing toward the surface, desperate to be remembered. The shadows thickened, curling around them like icy fingers. The laughter returned, haunting, mockingly cheerful. Fear coiled in Clara's chest. What if this darkness was alive? What if it wanted her children? Suddenly, a door swung open at the end of the hall, revealing a dimly lit room. Clara hesitated, sensing a pull toward it. "This way," she urged, dragging her children into the room just as she heard shuffling feet behind them. They slammed the door shut and pressed their backs against it, panting. Inside, the air was electric with dread. Clara scanned the room, taking in scattered remnants of the past: a bed shrouded in layers of dust, a broken mirror reflecting distorted images, and graffiti scrawled across the once white walls. "They're coming," Max gasped, eyes wide with terror. "Just breathe," Clara whispered, crouching to their level. "If we stay quiet, maybe we can." The sound of nails scraping across wood rang out, like a horror movie sound effect turned real. Her heart raced as Clara pressed a finger to her lips, urging her children to hush. A faint glow peeked from the cracks around the door. She held her breath, listening as the rustling grew closer. Their pursuer was close, too close. Then, just as quickly as it began, silence swallowed the room. Clara could feel every heartbeat, the stagnant air thick with uncertainty. She looked at Max and Lily, their faces blank, reflecting every nightmare they had ever encountered. Would they be next? Would this be their last moment together? But just then, from the depths of the dark room, a low moan rumbled. It was unlike anything they had heard before, not a sound of hunger or anger, but deep sorrow. Clara's chest tightened. What was that?" she stammered. I don't know." Max barely breathed. The shadows flickered. A figure shimmered in the darkness, outlines shifting, as anguished screams morphed into desperate cries. They weren't alone. Clara realized they were surrounded not by mere shadows, but by the echoes of lost souls searching for liberation. "Mommy, let us get out," Lily whimpered, pulling at Clara's sleeve. "Not yet," Clara whispered, torn between fear and an overwhelming urge to understand what had led them here. "We have to see." But the moment hung heavy, and uncertainty gnawed at her resolve. How deep did this terror run? And what remnants of the town's dark past were watching them now? As the door rattled against the pressure of unseen hands, Clara's decision crystallized. They needed to escape. But how could they leave if the very ghosts of Silver Creek demanded an audience? The figure in the shadows loomed closer, its features sharpening. It grinned now, a twisted semblance of humanity. "Stay with us," it urged, its voice a sickly sweet melody. Clara felt the cold wash over her skin, a harbinger of dread. What choice would they make in the face of that sinister invitation? Before she could ponder, the door burst open, and darkness flooded in. What awaited them on the other side? Would Clara end up facing her deepest fears, or would the darkness finally claim them for its own? The true horror was just beginning to surface. Clara's heart raced as the darkness poured into the room like a thick fog. The air felt heavy, suffocating, pressing against her lungs. She pressed her body against her children, trying to shield them from whatever evil now entered their sanctuary. A chorus of whispers surrounded them, soft at first, then rising in panicked crescendos, a cacophony of torment that made her skin crawl. "Mommy! I can't breathe!" Max shrieked, fingers tightening around her arm. Shoo. Hold on, she ordered, her voice trembling at the edges. She peered into the inky shadows, searching for something, anything, to anchor her sanity. But all she saw were vague shapes flickering just beyond the dim light, writhing like trapped insects in a jar. Stay with us, the figure beckoned again, its voice slicing through the tumult. Clara's skin prickled. It didn't sound human, not entirely. It was a low, sultry melody that turned stomachs and sent chills crawling down backs. Before she could react, the door behind them slammed shut with a thunderous clap. Clara jumped, clutching her children even tighter. We're trapped. Lily whimpered, tears streaming down her cheeks. The little girl's innocence felt like glass in Clara's stomach, threatening to shatter. The figure took a step closer, and Clara caught a glimpse of its face, a swirling mass of agony, features morphing in and out of shape. The whispered pleas intensified, echoing louder, desperate for understanding, for relief. Help us, save us, stop. Just stop. Clara shouted, panic rising in her throat like bile. She couldn't let her children hear this. Not today. Not ever, but the shadows thrived on her fear. The room pulsed with an energy that almost felt alive, weaving around them, squeezing. She had to do something, break the spell that held her captive. We have to find a way out of here, she urged, her voice shaking as she scanned the room. Then Clara noticed something, a small window, foggy with age, high up near the ceiling, its frame warped and coated in grime. We can climb, she gasped. That's our way out. Mommy, I can't. Max cried. He looked so small, so fragile. Clara could feel his fear radiating, coiling around her heart like a vice. Max, listen to me. You have to trust me, she said, forcing herself to sound calm. If we don't go now, we won't get another chance. With a surge of determination, Clara turned and faced the swirling shadows. Leave us alone. We are not your prisoners. Her voice rang, defiant and fierce. The laughter erupted again, echoing off the walls, mingling with the wails of the tormented souls. You cannot escape, it hissed, the air thickening like a storm cloud ready to burst. Clara. Lily tugged at her sleeve, panic seeping into her voice. I see it. It's coming. Time slowed as Clara felt the ground tremble. The figure lunged forward from the shadows, twisting and contorting, a horrible mockery of life. It was desperate, reaching for something it couldn't grasp. Climb. Clara yelled, thrusting her children upward. Go. She gave Max a boost and then lifted Lily, the small bodies clambering toward the window. A clawing sensation crawled up her spine, urging her to look back. She wanted to see, to know the horror behind them, but the urge to escape drove her. Suddenly, she felt icy fingers graze her ankle, pulling her down. In that moment of sheer terror, with only fear and chaos surrounding her, Clara knew they were fighting for their lives. She pulled away, her breath quickening as dread seeped into her bones. Mommy! Max shrieked. Don't look back. Climb! Clara screamed, her voice raw with terror. With every ounce of strength she had left, Clara twisted, kicking against the grasping shadows. The sounds of their cries escalated, merging into a nightmarish symphony. Were they losing this fight? Would they be claimed by an evil that hungered for their essence? As the window loomed closer, she felt the pressure around her grow heavier, suffocating. Would they fit? Would she lose them? But the darkness swirled, hungry and relentless. Was there truly a way out, or would it swallow them whole? The terror soared, and just as Clara grasped the ledge, she heard one final haunting whisper, "You'll come back, you always come back." With a final, desperate push, she reached for her children's hands, feeling their warmth slip away. What awaited them beyond that window, or worse, if they didn't escape at all? The answers remained just beyond reach. Clara's fingers gripped the jagged ledge, her heart pounding in her chest as she pulled her children closer. The shadows writhed behind them, reaching, taunting, with a malicious hunger. Max's small hand slipped from her grasp momentarily as he clawed his way up, and for an agonizing heartbeat, Clara feared he might fall back into that seething darkness. "Mommy! Help!" he gasped, panic palpable in his voice. With every ounce of will she could muster, Clara locked her arms around them and hoisted them higher. She felt a deep, primal force thrumming in the darkness below, a throbbing pulse that echoed her own frantic heartbeat. But they were so close. Just a little more suddenly, the figure lunged again, its grotesque shape morphing into a mass of desperate fury. Clara glanced back just once and felt her stomach drop at the sight. The darkness writhed like an angry serpent, snapping at her heels, hungry for their escape, but Clara shook her head clear. "No! You won't take us!" She shouted defiantly, her voice a raw cry that rebounded off the walls. "Mommy!" Lily wailed, her voice a shrill note piercing the chaos. Clara took a deep breath, kicking at the looming threat, and pushed her children upwards once more. "Climb! We're almost there," she urged, heart racing with terror and a flickering hope. The small window loomed like a lifeboat amidst a storm, and with one last desperate maneuver, Clara lodged her children through before squirming in behind them. She squeezed through, scraping her shoulders against the frame and feeling the frigid air rush in around her as the darkness clawed, just shy of reaching them. With a final shove, Clara tumbled into the outside world, gasping for air, the cold biting at her skin. They were free, no, they were alive, but the agony behind them shrieked with delight at their brief reprieve. "Run!" Clara shouted, and the three of them stumbled into the moonlit night, hearts racing, feet pounding against the cracked pavement. But as they ran, Clara risked a glance over her shoulder. The shadows had seeped out of the window, slinking along the ground like smoke, a dark fog that twisted and turned with a life of its own. It was relentless, gathering momentum, an impossibly large mass of despair and shadows. They darted past their house, the beacon of safety that felt a lifetime away now. "To the car!" Clara gasped, leading them towards the rusty sedan parked under the bare oak tree. Just as they reached it, a cold gust of wind whipped through the air, and Clara froze. The whispers returned, swirling around them like a forgotten tune, a sickening melody layered with pleading, desperation. Come back, come back!" Clara swung into the driver's seat, fumbling for the keys. "Max, get in!" "Lily, now!" She turned the ignition, and the engine sputtered before roaring to life. But the shadows flickered behind them, furious and encroaching. "No! What are you doing?" Max screamed, hands gripping the seat. "Get in the car!" Clara yelled again, glancing in the rearview mirror where a cruel haze filled the air. She saw faces twisted in torment, mouths moving, silent screams that chilled her blood. The car lurched forward, but as they pulled away, Clara noticed something, a shadow slipping into the back seat. It was there, right next to them, its cold presence like death itself washing over them. "Look away! Don't look!" she shouted, fighting against the instinct to turn and face it. But it was too late. She could feel it swirling around them, wrapping around her neck like a noose. "Why did you leave?" it whispered, a thousand voices merging into one echoing voice. "You can't escape that easily." Terror gripped Clara as her rational mind battled against the haunting reality. Would they ever be free? Or did the darkness have a claim on them, one they couldn't shake off? Her pulse quickened, adrenaline surging, and she turned onto a narrow dirt road, flipping the car's headlights off, plunging them into shadows. The whispering grew louder, drowning out the sound of the engine as the mist surrounded them. What awaited them if they managed to elude it? Were they truly safe, or was this just the beginning? With fear twisting her heart, Clara pressed the gas pedal further down, praying the abyss behind them wouldn't catch up and that they would find a place where the darkness had no power. But a darkness was waiting ahead, and she felt it in her bones, a revelation looming just outside their reach. The shadows twisted and turned as Clara pressed onward, the car bouncing over the uneven terrain. The whispers wrapped around them like a poisonous veil, and their chilling echo reached into her very soul. Why did you leave? It felt like knives scraping against her thoughts, remindful of every mistake she had made. Mommy, what is happening? Max whimpered, his small voice breaking the paralysis that gripped her. Clara glanced back. The darkness had shifted into something monstrous, stretching itself across the back seat, pulling at the edges of her sight. She gripped the steering wheel tighter, the metal cold against her palms, nearly grounding her in this dreadful reality. We're okay. Just keep your eyes forward, she choked, her voice barely above a whisper. But the shadows knew. As they hurtled down the dirt road, Clara felt the press of the dark figure, an icy breath against the back of her neck. Come back, it crooned, seductively, a promise laced with malice. Away. Get away. She shouted, eyes darting to the rearview mirror. The figure in the back seat was now more than a shadow, it was a reflection, grotesque and distorted. Its eyes, glinting like shards of glass, trapped her gaze, and she felt her resolve weakening. Mommy! Lily screamed, her voice rising in panic. Make it go away. The car swerved as Clara struggled to shake off the menacing grasp of the dark entity. She could feel her heartbeat in her throat, a rhythm of fear pushing her faster down the narrow road. We'll be okay, she chanted, clutching her children's hands as they quivered in their seats. Suddenly, a low rumble echoed through the night. The ground trembled beneath them, and the air thickened, rounding with a fetid stench. Clara's stomach lurched as the whisperings escalated into chaotic screams. Shadows swirled up around them, rising like a fog of despair, merging with the night air. Mommy! Max cried, tears spilling down his cheeks. What is happening? Clara couldn't answer. The road ahead narrowed into a fork. One path looked overgrown and choked with weeds, a sharp drop on one side, while the other glimmered faintly, beckoning with an eerie light. This way she pointed instinctively towards the light, a flicker of hope igniting within her. But the whispering grew frantic, a chorus of anguished voices shrilling, "No. Not there. Not there." Clara's heart raced wildly as the shadows fought against her choice. She could feel the pressure building in her chest, the choking sensation creeping up her throat. Hold on. She shouted as she jerked the wheel to the right, the tires skidding on gravel as they turned towards the light. The moment they veered in that direction, a deafening howl erupted from the darkness behind them, a sound so angry, so filled with fury that it rattled the windows. Clara dared a look back and nearly crashed the car. The figure transformed completely, now a grotesque mass of despair, arms stretching, clawing at their retreat. Faster, Mom! Faster! Max shouted, desperation laced in his voice. But the closer they got to the light, the more Clara felt the pull of the shadowy figure. It was as if the darkness begrudged her existence, and she could sense it clawing at her very skin, seeking to drag them back into the depths of its despair. With a final roar, she slammed the gas pedal down, adrenaline coursing through her veins as they raced towards the light. It was blinding now, enveloping the car in its heat. But just before they broke free, the whispers morphed into a deafening crescendo of fury. You can't escape. Then, in a heartbeat, they burst through. The world exploded in light, illuminating the darkness behind them. Clara squeezed her eyes shut at the intensity, her heart hammering as she tried to steady her breath. When she opened her eyes, they had crossed over. The shadows fell away, retreating like water from a shore, yet an unsettling quiet replaced the howling cacophony. Swallowing hard, Clara glanced at her children. Are we safe? Lily whispered, wide-eyed, the tremor in her voice a haunting reminder of the fear they had just fled. I think so, Clara answered, her heart still racing. But in the pit of her stomach, she felt a chilling realization. The shadows were still there, swirling in the back of her mind. Whatever had hunted them was not gone. It lingered, waiting for a moment to strike back, and then she saw it, the car ahead, its tires sunk deep in murky water at the end of the road, darkness rippling just below the surface. "What is that?" Max gasped, pointing. Clara's breath caught in her throat. "I don't know, but we need to find out." With an urgency unlike anything she'd felt before, she turned the car towards the water, knowing that the answers lay just beneath the surface. But what would they awaken? The air was thick, pressing down on Clara like a weight of dread. The engine purred softly, but it felt like a sinister lullaby in the face of the unknown. Max's finger trembled as it pointed toward the drowned car, a disquieting sight that expanded like a dark bruise on the landscape. "Mommy, I don't want to go there." His voice was small, fragile, barely carrying over the hum of the engine. Clara fought the tremor in her hands. She should have avoided the water, but something primal urged her forward. "We have to see," she murmured, her voice shaky. "Maybe there's someone who needs help." She edged the car closer, heart pounding like a drum. The light from the headlights danced across the surface of the murky water, revealing shapes just beneath. Shadows twisted and writhed, fighting against the pull of whatever lay below. Clara swallowed hard, but the taste of fear tinged her throat with bitterness. "Mommy?" Lily's voice quivered at the back, filled with disbelief. "What if something grabs us?" "We won't let it," Clara insisted, but the words felt hollow even to her own ears. She could see the desperation in her children's eyes. Gone was the flicker of hope. Now, they were just small souls adrift in a vast sea of dread. As they neared the submerged car, Clara's heart lurched. It was a small sedan, the paint peeling like old skin, windows fogged and dark. Flashes of movement toyed with her vision. Could she see fingers? No, it could only be the play of shadows. "Stop, Mommy!" Max shouted suddenly, panic flooding his voice. "Look in the back." The rear seat was empty, but the outline of a figure appeared for a brief moment, shrouded in darkness. Clara squeezed her eyes shut, convinced that she had conjured it from the depths of her own terror. When she opened her eyes, nothing remained, only the soft lap of water against the tires. "Keep looking ahead," Clara commanded, forcing herself back to the here and now, her eyes locked on the frightening sight ahead. But the water was shifting, moving in ways that defied logic, swirling in slow, deliberate patterns that felt almost sentient. "What if they're calling to you?" Max whispered, fear evident. "What if they want you to come closer?" The trembling in Clara's legs overtook her resolve. She gripped the wheel, staring at the twisted shapes in the muck. "Nothing is calling me," she lied, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm. "Nothing." But even as she said it, something lurked at the edges of her consciousness, brushing against her thoughts like ghostly fingers. The shadows were still there, shifting, waiting. Suddenly, a loud splash interrupted the silence, sending a surge of cold dread racing through Clara. A face emerged from the water, slick and pale, wide-eyed and desperate. It wasn't a figment, this was corporeal horror staring back. Clara and her children froze, every heartbeat thumping loudly in the tense air. "Help!" it croaked, a guttural sound that echoed like the call of a siren. There was an innocence in its gaze that tugged at Clara's heart, but something deeper whispered caution. "Mommy!" Lily shrieked, clutching Max. "Get us out of here." But Clara's mind raced. She was teetering on the edge of a moral precipice. Could she save this person? Footsteps, cold and eerie, echoed in her mind, entangling her very sanity. Before she could respond, the figure lunged forward, arms outstretched, towards the car. The movement was sudden, a rush of murky water splashing against the tires, bringing with it an unbearable wave of darkness. Clara felt the grip of panic rise in her throat, choking her breath. "Drive!" Max shouted, the words snapping Clara back to reality. She slammed her foot on the gas, tires screeching as she veered away from the edge, but the moment felt like a lifetime, and the shadows howled in protest. As they sped away, Clara could sense something dark following, the whispers now insistent. "You can't escape the truth," it hissed, wrapping around her thoughts, tightening and twisting until despair wrapped its fingers around her heart. They drove on, leaving the pond behind, but the specter of what they encountered lingered like a foul stench, hanging heavy in the air. Clara felt their eyes burning on her back, the pressing guilt of the figure they had left behind clawing at her resolve. Just when she thought they had put enough distance between them and the water, Clara's headlights illuminated the road ahead. And there, standing in the middle of the path, silhouetted against the night, was a figure, drenched and still, staring directly at them with hollow eyes. Who was that? Lily's whisper trembled in the confined space, but Clara had no answer, only dread swelling inside her, ready to break free. The car slowed involuntarily as fear and realization gripped her. What had they let loose into the night? The figure in the road remained motionless, a dark silhouette against the headlights' glare, its face obscured but radiating an unsettling presence. Clara's heart raced, the weight of dread growing heavier with each passing second. "Mommy, drive," Max pleaded, his voice a lifeline tangled with desperation. Clara's foot trembled above the gas pedal, caught between the instinct to flee and an unbearable urge to confront whatever horror lay before them. She willed her mind to clarify, to make sense of the motionless form. Could it be another twisted soul, seeking retribution for their sins? Clara Lily's startled whisper pulled her from the depths of her thoughts. Yes? Its moving panic ignited within Clara as reality sunk in. The figure had shifted ever so slightly, its head tilting toward her. A pale, gaunt face became momentarily illuminated by the harsh light. Clara could see it clearly now, sunken cheeks and eyes that seemed to absorb light, deep wells of darkness and misplaced tears. "Drive now," Max shouted again, urgency reaching a fever pitch. But hesitance held her frozen. The figure raised its hand slowly, palm outward, almost in a gesture of surrender, or perhaps a plea for help. The air felt electric and thick, suffocating her resolve. "Mommy," Lily whimpered, clenching Max tighter, her small frame trembling like a leaf in the wind. "Please." Clara shook herself back to reality, panic churning in her stomach. If any part of the figure was real, they needed to escape. She slammed her foot down, the car jolting forward, tires squealing. The headlights blinded the figure, creating a moment of stark clarity before her vision faded into darkness. As they sped past, Clara could feel the figure's gaze penetrating the glass, a burning intensity that seemed to reach into her very soul. Whatever tortured spirit had emerged from the depths, it hadn't been lying in still silence, it had been waiting. Waiting for her. "Where are we going?" Max asked, his little voice filled with confusion. Clara didn't answer. She couldn't. The road ahead blurred into indistinct shadows, driving through an unending maze that twisted through the trees like lumbering giants. Visibility was lost to the encroaching darkness, the oppressive weight of night creeping in on all sides. Suddenly, the dashboard lights flickered, and then dimmed, plunging their surroundings into near-total blackness except for the faint glow of the headlights. A shiver crept down Clara's spine. "No! Please!" She shouted at the vehicle, tapping the steering wheel with frantic urgency. "Not now!" The car hummed in protest, the engine sputtering as if it sensed her terror. The road seemed to narrow, flanked by towering trees that leaned over like foreboding sentinels. They were trapped in a groove of despair, each moment stretching thinner as darkness thickened around them. Then a sound broke through the silence, distant but growing louder. A low resonance, rhythmic like a heartbeat or the echo of a drowning voice, pleading. Clara strained her ears. The whispering was back, insistent and cruel. "You can't escape the truth, make it stop." Max shouted, tears streaking down his face. "I'm trying. Hold on." Clara replied, desperation clawing at her chest. Just as she wrestled with the steering wheel, another sound wrapped around them, a soft, smooth knock against the window. It sent icy fingers of dread spiraling through her nerves. "Mommy!" Lily cried, her voice cracking, "Something's outside." Clara's breath hung in the air, heavy with fear. The shadows outside shifted, forming shapes that felt sentient, as if they were moving, progression breaking into their reality. The knocking grew louder, a low tap, tap, tap that was undeniably deliberate. Then it stopped, leaving an unsettling silence that clung like smoke. Clara turned slowly, dread coiling tighter. The figure was there again, standing just outside, grinning now, its eyes glinting with a menacing delight, a predator awaiting its prey. "What do you want?" Clara managed to whisper, but she could hardly hear her own voice over the pounding of her heart. That grin widened impossibly, and for a moment, the world faded as she felt herself slipping beneath a tide of shadows. And as her vision darkened, she caught a final glimpse of something shimmering in the corner of her eye, an old photograph pressed against the window, palm prints smudged across the glass. Who had they let in? The taunting whisper returned, chilling her blood, "You cannot run from what you've done," and with that, all the lights flickered out, leaving only the sound of their gasping breaths in the void. What was the truth they had left behind? The darkness swallowed them, a heavy, suffocating blanket that dulls the senses. Clara's heart thudded against her ribcage like a drum, each beat a reminder of her vulnerability. She blinked frantically, trying to stimulate the headlights into brightness, but only a murky gray filled her vision now, as if they had entered a different realm. "Mommy! I can't see!" Max cried, his voice small and trembling. I know," Clara whispered, strained, her breath shallow. The pounding of her heart drowned out all but the faintest sounds, the distant rustle of branches, the soft thuds against the vehicle, and the nearly inaudible breathing of her children. And then, a new noise embedded itself in the darkness, a raspy laugh, floating in from the outside. Clara felt it slither through her, an unwelcome chill that locked her limbs in fear. Her fingers gripped the steering wheel so tight they went numb. She started the car again, praying, "Please, just work," but the engine sputtered, wheezing like it suffered from the same dread hanging thick in the air. Outside, the laughter repeated, taunting her fragile resolve. It was an old sound, not like her children's, it carried years of malice, dread wrapped in the playful veneer of a child's game. Was it real? "Mommy! I don't like this." Lily's whimpering was high-pitched, piercing through Clara's foggy haze. Instantly, she turned to her left, intent on reassuring her daughter, when there was a sudden, frantic tap on the other window. A shadow flitted by, its outline unmistakably familiar. "Mommy, it's standing right there," Max croaked, pointing. Clara felt her stomach drop. She dared to look. The figure was closer now, gray against the glass, its swollen eyes glimmering with that same ghastly delight. It leaned closer as if trying to peer inside, and its grin stretched wider, a rictus of horror that stole her breath. "What do you want?" Clara murmured again, words slipping out like desperate prayers, but then, it stopped smiling, lips pulling back to reveal a gaping maw full of jagged teeth. The truth it whispered, barely a breath, yet heavy with promise. Clara recoiled. She couldn't shake the feeling that the air was thickening, coiling around her throat. Another tap, more insistent this time. The car rattled as if it too felt the terror rising. Clara's knuckles blanched around the wheel, she was paralyzed with fear. And just as she made the choice to flee again, the laughter erupted around them, layering the stillness with its menacing echo. "Drive, Mommy! Drive!" commanded Max, now crying freely. Okay. It tore through a raw yell of determination, and she threw the car into gear. Tires screeched, and the vehicle lurched ahead, slamming into the night, but the road ahead seemed to twist and warp in response. Suddenly, her dashboard lit up like fireworks, flooding with images, faces, moments, shrouded in dark memories. All those years, buried deep, now clawing for attention. Town gatherings, the laughter of friends, the image of her own smiling family accompanied by familiar shadows lurking in the distance, faces morphing into grotesques as if taunting her through time. "Stop it!" Clara screamed, slapping at the dashboard, trying to will the images away. But the haunting echoes only rose, becoming a relentless choir of familiar voices scratching at her sanity. "Truth be told, Clara, you brought us here," they taunted, frustrated, tears streamed down her cheeks, blurring her vision, streaking across the ghostly visage on the other side. The figure began to reach, a hand like smoke extending toward her. It was an invitation, an access point to the past. Suddenly, the car jolted violently, throwing Clara forward. The headlights flickered once again, but this time filled the space with a fleeting glimpse of chaos. She saw twisted roots surging upwards, snaking across the black asphalt as it transformed into something far more sinister. What lay beyond the veil? The vehicle stopped entirely. The laughter faded into a hush, leaving an eerie calm hanging in the air. Clara looked at her children, their wide eyes gleaming with shared terror, and the question hung unspoken. What had they awakened? In that quiet, a new whisper filled the void, deep, heavy, impossible to ignore. You know what must happen now. And then, the shadows began to close in. Clara's heart raced as the shadows pressed around them, constricting like a vice. She could hear the soft whispers twisting through the air, taunting her. You know what must happen now. The essence of dread clung to her, thick and suffocating. The echo of the laughter had faded, but the chilling truth behind those words buzzed persistently, demanding her attention. Mommy? Max's small voice quivered beside her, breaking through the haze. Clara turned to him, trying to gather her thoughts, to offer him something akin to comfort, but her chest felt hollow, weighed down by the heart-stopping reality surrounding them. Hold on tight, okay? She managed to whisper, forcing strength into her tone. With trembling hands, she turned the ignition, desperate for the car to roar back to life. The engine spluttered but didn't ignite. Please, not now, she murmured, glancing back out the window where the figure still hovered. Its grotesque grin had transformed to a look of impatient malice, and the whispers flared again, swirling around her. Help us! Clara could feel the pounding in her chest align with their pitiful cries. All those lost souls begging for liberation tangled her heartstrings, invoking a sense of guilt for their plight. The thought of escaping without addressing the truth clawed at her insides. What did it want? She turned to Max and Lily. We need to face it, she said, her own fear flickering in her voice. We need to understand what's happening to us. With a sudden resolve, Clara flung the door open, the movement pushing against the weight of darkness that surrounded them. Stay together, she commanded, moving toward the figure, whose features shifted like the shadows themselves. You brought us here, it sang, its voice distorting as if warped by years of anguish. The words rang familiar, echoing within Clara's mind as though she had known this presence for a long time. With each step, the memories swelled. The laughter, the joy of the harvest festivals, the familiar faces of neighbors. No more running, she declared, the words escaping like a whisper of strength she barely recognized. You've held our secrets. Danced among our shadows, the figure taunted, inching closer and revealing a shadowy hand extended as if to pull her into the depths of despair. The essence of despair enveloped her like a shroud, seeking to pull her under. But Clara held her ground. I won't deny the truth anymore. I acknowledge you. She cried, the weight of the shadows swirling around her letting up just a fraction as if surprised by her defiance. Mama? Max called out, clutching Lily's hand tightly, eyes wide with uncertainty. The figure hesitated, a flicker of something softer in its ghastly gaze. Come on, Clara urged, steeling herself for whatever lay ahead. Join me, let us address our darkness together. It felt like a lifeline thrown into the abyss. The figure's form rippled, momentarily losing its stability. Clara took a deep breath, sensing the hesitation. She faced it, woman to shadow. You are part of us. This darkness can't win. Not today. The shadows pulsed and churned more violently, but Clara remained firm. The whispers shifted from an angry tide to a melding of sorrowful pleas, their cries rife with sadness and regret. Save us, Lily pulled at Clara's shirt, her small voice rising above the eerie chorus. Mommy, please. Though her fear was palpable, it also reminded Clara of their bond unbreakable even in the face of darkness. Clara reached to gather her children together, holding them close. I love you both. Whatever happens, we do this together. Together echoed the figure, losing the monstrous edge, its form flickering between shadow and something almost human. As if sensing a shift, the dark presence stepped back, allowing a crack of light to filter through. It's not too late, Clara pressed, pushing forward despite the shadows swarming at her feet. You were once part of this town. We can heal together. The whispers turned softer, almost accepting. The figure contorted its head, tilting as if reality itself was realigning around them. Clara felt warmth break through the darkness was yielding. As the shadows receded, Clara's resolve surged, the air around them lightened, lifting each weighty burden that had settled upon her heart. They moved forward, inching closer to the figure, whose fearful guise began to dissolve. Clara stretched out her hand, reaching for that shadow-laden embrace, feeling her own courage ripple forward. In that moment of contact, a surge of light enveloped them, cascading across the shadows as if acknowledging the truth of bygone days and hidden sorrows. The darkness shrieked, and for just a flicker of time, Clara saw smiling faces emerge from the shadows, joined in harmonious acceptance. Thank you, the figure murmured, its form cracking open like an egg, surrendering to the warmth of acceptance. And then they were gone, the shadows dissolving into gentle breezes of autumn leaves swirling beneath the streetlights. Clara turned to Max and Lily, tears brimming in her eyes. We did it, we faced it. She smiled, that flicker of warmth catching fire as they embraced, knowing together they had taught the darkness a lesson. Perhaps there was still healing yet to be done, but they were free now, the first shadows of night melting slowly into dawn. As they walked back towards the car, the first rays of morning spilled across the horizon, igniting the sky a new day, a new chance, and hopes reawakened. The whispers were now faint, lulled by the promise of light. Clara regarded her children, each small face radiant with life, every heartbeat echoing their defiance against the darkness. Let us go home, she said softly, ready to face whatever awaited them. And though there would always be shadows, Clara knew they had fought the darkness together. They had emerged victorious, stronger than before, woven in love and remembrance, and for the first time, they felt free. Now it was time to begin again. With courage lighting their way, Clara and her children embraced the dawn, knowing the beauty of their bond could weather even the deepest shadows. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support for more exclusive stories like this. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and keep this journey alive. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this incredible conclusion.